Zach Tom signs a record-setting deal and cements himself as one of the league's top offensive linemen. We also discuss other Packers news and the start of training camp.
Yeah, I've been wanting this shit forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me. Brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the better. Okay. Hey. Yeah. Ain't no errors, baby. It's a new era. I wake up early feeling rich like I'm cash.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Sounds Gouda. My name is Jordan Olson, and my co-host and best friend over here is Rob Relf. So, as always, we want to thank all of our listeners, whether this is your first show with us or if you are a regular, and we definitely appreciate our regulars. So, we always are putting out new episodes on Wednesdays and Saturdays on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. And right now we are doing a promo or kind of a way to get some new subscribers. But for every new 50 subscribers we get on YouTube, we are going to give away some Sounds Gouda swag. So if you become a public subscriber, we will enter you in a raffle, and we'll draw from that raffle to give out a Sounds Gouda hat. So if you haven't subscribed, please do so and give yourself a chance to win that swag. So we got a lot to discuss on this episode. The Packers have given us lots of news in the last 24 or 48 hours here. So we're going to run down those things, everything from Zach Tom, Anthony Belton, the signing of Will Shepherd, and then, of course, a little bit of a training camp preview, talking about some scheduling and some camp battles. So with that, we're going to jump right into it. So, Rob, the Packers gave Zach Tom what's being put out here as a record-setting extension. I think that's mostly due to the guaranteed money that they gave him, or the signing bonus. It was a $30.2 million signing bonus, which I'm reading that's believed to be the largest ever for an offensive lineman, previously besting David Bakhtiari and Laramie Tunzel, which got a $30 million signing bonus. And the deal is a 4-year deal worth $88 million. And I hear that there's some incentives involved that could make that deal even a little richer. I think it could go up to $96 million, if my memory serves me correct. What do you think about the deal, and what does this mean for him moving forward?
I mean, it gives us security over there on the right side, and it's obviously, this performance justification. We all, if you have been listening to us throughout this off season, we talked about this ad nauseum. We knew that this was going to be coming. In fact, I believe we did say probably right around training camp. So yeah, I think it's really, really good for the Packers. I think it makes sense. I mean, just looking at his kind of career trajectory, he's originally a 4th-round pick in 2022 out of Wake Forest. So, he's come a long way. There's been many that have said too, I believe, including Will Anderson. I posted at least on the Sounds Good page. It said he was one of the best tackles that he had gone against too, as well. It's like you were talking with me too before we started this, Jordan. This is a very Packers-y type of contract, right? Even with this massive signing bonus. So I think that Zach is definitely worth it. I think this brings some other contract resolutions, or excuse me, contract questions. We have the Elton Jenkins stuff, possible stuff with Quay Walker going on, but this gives us some security over on this side, while training camp provides us other battles on the other parts of this line. So I'm pretty excited.
And kind of dive into that a little bit more, Rob. Like, specifically, what do you think this means for Elton Jenkins, and what does it mean for Rasheed Walker?
Yeah, well, I think Rasheed Walker, I mean, you can't pay everybody. They're going to have to give it up somewhere. I have heard too, I believe it was per, Rob Domosky, that they're, willing to probably, Jenkins is the guaranteed money, right? He probably wants a little bit more guaranteed money, maybe wants a little bit more added on his contract. I don't know if they're going to be able to do that. He is turning 30 at the end of this year. You do have Sean Ryan, you have Jacob Monk, you got some other good draftees too, younger, cheaper, talent for the Packers. So you're not going to be able to sign everybody. I think after this year, I think Walker's gone, and then I think that you're going to get a Jordan Morgan in there at left tackle, and or depending on how the center position works out, maybe right guard too. So I think the kind of cards are on the table for Rasheed Walker specifically, and then Jenkins. I don't know, man. Maybe I'm just reading too much into the news, into the hype, but Packers don't want to do it. But Jenkins obviously, is quote unquote doing them a favor. So, I mean, Jordan, let me ask you this: Do you think Elton Jenkins is the starting center for the Green Bay Packers this year?
I mean, I think that depends a lot on Elton Jenkins. The ball's really in his court now to decide what kind of person he wants to be. Zach Tom did the right thing. He showed up for all the offseason programs and he got rewarded in kind for that. You're right. Rob Domonsky did say that the Packers would be willing to talk, but not until later in the season, until he's settled at center and they can see how that experiment works out. I think that is the smart and prudent move to do. There's a lot of Walkers to talk about. I'm going to talk about Quay Walker for a second, not Rasheed. But, there was some conversation about what they would do with his contract. And I think they could treat Elton Jenkins and Quay Walker's contract very similarly to the way that they treated Aaron Rodgers' first contract. And, stay with me for a second here. But I think when they signed Aaron Rodgers to his extension, not his first contract. Obviously, his first contract was his rookie deal. But when they signed him to his first extension, my understanding is that they basically had an agreement in place going into the season. You show us that, you are the player that we expect you to be at that position. And we will essentially all get together and sign that deal. So I think that they could handle both the Elton Jenkins and the Quay Walker situations that way, where they come to an agreement about what an extension looks like. This is going well halfway through the season. It's week 8. Let's put pen to paper and let's make you a Green Bay Packer for a little while longer. I honestly think that that's how both of those situations are going to play out at this point in time. Rasheed Walker, yeah, I think that he's going to have to play for his money, whether that's as a Packer or somebody else. And we're going to talk about camp battles later, but it certainly sounds like Rasheed Walker is going to, be battling to keep that spot at left tackle as well. Where does this put Zach Tom in terms of offensive lineman paydays? So this makes Zach Tom the 9th highest paid offensive lineman in the NFL. It's both the 9th highest in average annual value at $22 million a season and total value at $88 million. So how's that ranked to some other guys? If we're looking specifically at right tackle, Penei Sewell right now is the 2nd highest paid offensive lineman. $28 million a year average annual value. Obviously, Penei Sewell seems like he's going to be somebody who's like a, 10-time Pro Bowler, 5-time All-Pro guy. So right now, Zach Tom is not that yet. Zach Tom, unfortunately, has to play in the same conference and same division. So, Zach Tom is going to have to swim upstream to kind of upend Penei Sewell from any of those accolades anytime soon. Then Lane Johnson, you go a little bit further down this list. I think he currently is the tied for the 5th highest paid offensive lineman at $25 million a year average annual value. And just in comparison, we've named this guy before. Compare Zach Tom to Dan Moore Jr. Dan Moore Jr. got it was $20.5 million a year average annual value. He's a lesser player than Zach Tom. He only graded out as like a 67.2 last year, according to PFF. We know that PFF is not the end all be all. And we don't treat it like that. But, compare that to Zach Tom. Zach Tom had an 87.5 PFF grading last year. So, only got paid slightly more than Dan Moore Jr., and you're getting a much better player for that value at that point in time. So, yeah. Anything else to add on Zach Tom before we jump in or transition to the Anthony Belton signing?
I mean, the Packers make it pretty clear if you perform well, you get paid accordingly, right? And you show up and you do the right thing. So he's a culture guy. He's also performing on the field very well, and he got paid accordingly. So, if you want to get paid by the Packers, including if it's the very, very rare 3rd contract, which, Kenny Clark got, we all know that. You got to continue. You got to put consistent play on the field too. So I think that that's just the key for anybody, and it's the same way it works at work too. You perform, you get incentives, you get bonuses, you get promotions, and all that sort of stuff too. So I totally understand this from the organizational, side of it. I just hope, at least for the Jenkins part of this, maybe they can have a meet in the middle. But I expected the Tom news to get done, and I'm pretty excited for that.
And you bring up a good point there, and we won't stay on this too long because I promised to transition. But two quick things there. Elton Jenkins' play has declined slightly since he's signed that contract, and he has had that injury. If he would have continued playing at the level he did when the contract was signed, they'd probably already have said, "Yeah, we're going to take care of you." Second point is just in Zach Tom's value as a player and a representative of the Packers in the league. I didn't know this, but Zach Tom is actually the Packers representative for the NFL Players Association. Every team has one. And he's currently the Packers rep. So I think that says a lot about how they view him too as a player, somebody that's obviously intelligent and can speak well on both of the players and the team, and doing the right thing. So but let's talk about Anthony Belton. Less exciting, less information than we have on Zach Tom. But he did sign his deal, so that holdout, or I guess it's not technically a holdout because he's not a professional until he signs that contract. That's over. So we expect to see his first action as a Green Bay Packer when camp opens as you listen to this episode today. So most of the other second round picks have signed now. That kind of was a avalanche effect after a few of them kind of gave in. I think there only remain a few players unsigned outside of Shamar Stewart, which is a completely different situation, and Quinton Jenkins, which is having legal issues. So, if you kind of look at that contract, even though there's not a lot of details out there, you can kind of assume where this is going to land. He's got $8 million. The contract is worth, for that draft slot, a little over $8 million. Most of the players around him, minus a few outliers, have pretty much, those teams have given them 2 or 3 years guaranteed, or most of 3 guaranteed years. So you probably assume that of that $8 million he's set to earn, that somewhere between $5 and $6 million will be guaranteed. And really shouldn't be a problem because a guy you're drafting the second round, not only are you hoping plays all 4 of those years of that rookie deal, but you're hoping to be in a position like we're talking about with Zach Tom and giving him a big second contract. So I don't know. I'm excited to see Anthony Belton in camp. I mean, what are you most excited about in terms of seeing Anthony Belton over the next few weeks and what he can bring to this team?
Well, I mean, he's a bruiser. There's been a lot of conversation, whether he plays tackle, whether he kicks in to play guard. I believe he's probably a little bit more of the guard, but I totally understand the left tackle. That's where he played, for 3 years at NC State. Absolutely behemoth offensive lineman. Walker, speaking of him, he's pretty big too as well. Belton's even bigger. Uh, I think it shows a little bit of the change of the guard, all the puns intended there, to where, even with Aaron Banks, they're wanting to get some of these big bruisers in there. I don't know if that's more or less, to pound the rock a little bit more. You got to think that that's some of the emphasis, but bigger guys that can move really, really well. So I'll be really interested to see, at least in the preseason games, how much he's playing at the guard positions, how many snaps he's getting, how much he's getting over at tackle for some of that tackle experience, and really where he excels and how he kind of holds that down, not only just for the preseason, but definitely in training camp too. I'm really, really excited. I guess whatever way you'd want to swing it, Banks at left guard and Belton at right guard, with Jenkins and or Ryan in the middle, or Jacob Mock if you want to throw it that way too. Man, that's a bruising inside interior of your offensive line with a little bit lighter of a guy, and Tom, who does a really good job at right tackle. And then, you can put in Walker, obviously, who's going to probably get the first team reps at left tackle, and or Jordan Morgan, who will have some competition there too. But I think the future is bright for Anthony Belton, and pretty Also, to just off note, it makes me really excited to be able to have Russ Ball still on the Packers, to be able to do all these contract negotiations with all the different verbiage and stuff that's coming out. It just goes to show that Russ Ball is extremely valuable and has a lot of experience and knows how to get these contracts done and draft really good culture guys, that could come in and be complementary with all these other draftees and players that we currently have on the squad.
Hey, he's a master of his craft for sure. And if it's like most other training camps and especially preseason games, we're not going to see a lot of the starters, right? So I do expect to see an ample amount of Anthony Belton. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see where he lines up. I think he's a tackle, but we've had that discussion a bunch on this show. So we're really not going to rehash it again until we actually see it on the field, in a preseason game, and we've got some real things to talk about. But some new news, adding another body to an already extremely deep room, Will Shepherd. So what do you know about Will Shepherd, Rob, and why is he an intriguing addition for the Green Bay Packers on the eve of players reporting to camp?
Well, I mean, obviously we know him from playing at Colorado with Shadur Sanders and the Sanders crew over there. Originally, he played 4 years at Vanderbilt, where he did earn the second team All SEC status in 2022. So, he got to play with Travis Hunter, obviously as well. We all know that Travis Hunter got picked up by the Jaguars, or got drafted, I want to say. He was originally signed with the Buccaneers, but was waived with a failed physical too, which I didn't really know until we were picking up on some of this information. But he went to try out with the Denver Broncos, but was not kept after minicamp. So I mean, I think that the road for Will Shepherd is, I don't want to say doom and gloom, but it'll be really, really difficult. I don't know if he's like your seventh, eighth, really, really back end type of. I felt like we already had some really good receiving competition there too. So, he's a little bit slower on the 40 time. So 4.58. So more think of your Dontavian Wicks, but you know, he can play. He played halfway decent too at Colorado, but really, in my opinion, this is just kind of roster training camp, fill in the spots. I'd be honestly a little bit shocked if Will Shepherd made this roster, but maybe possibly practice squad, but I also kind of question that too as well.
I don't. I mean, I think I'm penciling him in on the practice squad right now. And why is that? I think he's very similar. I think you hope he can do some of the same things you see from Romeo Dobbs as an X wide receiver. And I think that, just pencil him in for the practice squad, let him be in this system for a year, let him develop. Because if you live in a world where, Romeo Dobbs and Christian Watson aren't Green Bay Packers next year, you give a guy a chance like an Alan Lazard after a couple years in the system and bring him up. He's got a couple other guys that he's probably going to be on the practice squad with. But, I think that's what his destiny is. So I'm just kind of excited to see him. In our pre-draft process and our draft guide, we originally had him on our orange tier. He had a little bit slower 40 time, like you mentioned. Actually, a tick ahead of Dontavian Wicks at 4.58. I think Dontavian Wicks ran a 4.62, but he didn't have a 3-cone and he had some incomplete testing. So there were some red flags for us. I think PFF originally had him rated like 274, but he was a higher rated player than some of the other guys who were drafted out there, including some of his teammates. All in all, he shared the field at Colorado with 3 other NFL wide receivers who were drafted this year, and including Travis Hunter, which you mentioned. So he was third on that team in targets and receptions and yards. So there were a lot of mouths to feed in that system too. He had an overall pretty good productive year. After they adjusted some things with his RAS, though, I see that he ended up scoring 8.72 officially, so higher than the 7.07 unofficial RAS in the pre-draft process. So not a bad athlete, 6'2", 203, a little slow, but he is a great jumper. He has over a 40-inch vertical and over a 10-foot broad jump, so he can probably jump up and high point and win that ball, if his hands are good. I don't know that much about his hands. I tried to look at some stuff on PFF to see what I could find. There wasn't a lot of analysis on there. One thing to note, though, is he did struggle separating in one-on-one situations. That was reflected in his PFF grade. His separation speed, his route running could be some things that you could point to there. But, a guy who does have some high-level experience and accolades in college, somebody I'll just be excited to see where he fits on this roster or on the practice squad, as I think. But, yeah. Then the Packers, they cut Alex Hale. This is a super small thing, but I do really think that the move is maybe a precursor to free up the NFL pathways spot on the practice squad for Taylor Elgersma. I have a hard time believing that the Packers are going to be able to keep Elgersma on the practice squad, though, with a team like the Bills being so frustrated that the Packers kind of swooped in and signed him before he had a chance to come to camp. So I don't know. There's not really much to say about Alex Hale. But what do you think about that idea of freeing up a spot for Elgersma on the practice squad, and do you agree that it's going to be hard to retain him there, and they're probably going to have to roster him? I mean, I know we haven't even seen him throw a ball in the preseason, but what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. I do think that, if he gets cut, he's going to get picked up pretty quick. I mean, I guess, I'd like to see how training camp plays out too, preseason, all that sort of stuff. But, you got obviously Jordan Love, Malik Willis. So those are, obviously two for sure. So yeah, I think it'll be hard to be able to keep Elgersma on the practice squad. So I definitely agree.
So let's jump in. We said we were going to preview training camp a little bit. You probably all know the schedule when studying it as much as Rob and I have. But, there are a couple highlights as we record the show. It's on Monday night, so veterans report tomorrow on Tuesday as you listen to this show. Training camp starts today. Yeah, training camp is here. A couple other important dates. Family night's on August 2nd. That's always such a special moment for many of these players, for young Packers fans who get to go and maybe, experience the Packers, but aren't quite ready to, go to a regular season game and, all of the money and everything that's involved in that. But that's an amazing tradition. And it gives a lot of guys like Will Shepherd extra chance to showcase their skills, uh, on a night like that. They've got their first preseason game on August 9th versus the Jets. 2 sets of joint practices. They've got one with the Colts before that preseason game on August 16th. And then they host a joint practice against the Seahawks on August 21st before they have their preseason finale against the Seahawks on August 23rd. So I'm just chomping at the bit for all of this preseason action. But what are you excited for in regards to the schedule, in regards to camp battles? I don't know. What do you think, Rob?
Yeah, I mean, just excited to have football back. I think that's the main point. Excited to see the young talent, the rookies. I think that'll all be great. Joint practices are always good and fun with other teams too, as well. Family nights, like you alluded to, is pretty special, and gives a lot of time for a lot of those players to shine. So that'll be good. The Packers do a really good job with the family night. I mean, camp battles to watch. There's so much. We talked about it quite a bit too with the offensive line, all the different scenarios. We actually made a video on that too. So if you want to go back, shameless plug, check that out. Secondary, what ends up happening with Javon Bullard, where does he play? Is he back up to Evan Williams, for that safety spot? Do they mix in Oladapo in there? The young corners, pretty excited to see Hale King, Micah Robinson, just those kind of back end type of depth corners. I think off-ball linebacker with the addition of Isaiah Simmons, what we're going to see out of Tyron Hopper. I think there's a lot of intriguing things as far as off-ball linebacker for this crew. Defensive line, how does Brinson and Stackhouse, how do they do as kind of being that cog there in the middle, how they perform, because I think that'll be pretty important for us too, and who ends up shining for that. And then, we're alluding to it too, but even with the addition of Will Shepherd, all the kind of scenarios, McCall Hardman, Romeo Dobbs, Matthew Golden, very, very, very excited to watch Matthew Golden in kind of this wide receiver competition and battles and see how well everybody's catching the ball. I mean, it is training camp, it's preseason, it's not the regular season. So kind of take it with a grain of salt, grain of sand, whatever. But there's more than a few things that I'm excited, and just overall in general, just really, really excited to have football back.
I think in that secondary, I don't think, obviously, I said we're not going to see a lot of the starters in these preseason games. I mean, the Packers have definitely leaned more into, testing some of those starters during the joint practices. But, I think they kind of know what they've got in their top three corners. I think they're going to roll out all of those young guys and just let them battle it out in those preseason games, and I think it's going to be really interesting by the time you get through the second preseason game. How are they holding up to the test? I could see them maybe even not playing Hobbs and Nixon and Valentine much, even against the ones, because they might want to test the likes of Kalen King and Micah Robinson against other teams' higher performing talent to really gauge whether they can trust them filling in the event of an injury. And if not, that's maybe where we're going to see the Packers make a move to try to trade for a veteran corner or not. So, you mentioned a lot of the other ones. We talked about the defensive line, wide receiver. I think I'm really excited to see Savion Williams hit the field. He was not viewed at all in mini camp, and Rob and I with John in our last show, we had kind of like a post-show discussion and all of the fun things that you might see from Savion Williams. I don't think we're going to see a lot of those special packages in the preseason because Matt LaFleur is going to save it for the regular season. But what would that look like with Jordan Love and Malik Willis and Savion Williams in a wildcat triple option, type of offense, for a couple plays? It could be really, really fun. Really, really fun. So, just in general, Savion Williams, I think they're gonna have to see how much they can trust him to catch the ball, what his route running looks like. So that'll be fun. I'm not even sure how much Matthew Golden is going to get to play. They're certainly going to want to give him some reps to kind of, hey, this is the NFL. But when the other team's ones are out of there, they might be like, great, you played 2 series. We know you're probably our number 3 wide receiver, number 4 wide receiver. All right, all these other guys, it's your opportunity to show us what you got now. So, but yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of fun. I've been wanting to talk a little bit about the Brewers, actually itching for a while on this show. But what do you think of the Brewers coming off of a 10-game win streak? They're going for 11 in a row right now as we record this. They had a season sweep of the Dodgers, which I think that's the first time in team history they've done that. I don't know. What do you make of these young and hungry Milwaukee Brewers right now, Rob?
Every year, they they need to pay their scouting and their draft and develop team, especially for the pitchers. They need to give them a big old bonus or 2 or 3. They just keep rolling out some really good guys. I know there's a lot of talk of Suarez from the Diamondbacks. I think you'd have to give up quite a bit probably to get him, but me and Jordan were even just talking about, how do you take Caleb Durbin out of that lineup with how he's been hitting since the end of May? I suppose you could have, insert one of those guys at DH for sure, and does create a lot more depth. And the Brewers just have elite, 1, 2, 3, even Katana, man. Katana has been one of the best 1-year signings so far and just has provided some really good back end depth for them. It's just been really, really amazing. And I got to watch a little bit of his game against the Dodgers. Just a savvy veteran. Always hated going up against him. And now that he's with the Brewers, I can totally understand why. So with their starting rotation, then with their bullpen, and then their closer with McGill, obviously made the All Star. It just elite pitching, and then they play typical small market, small ball. Try to run a lot. I think they lead the league in steals. I could be wrong on that. If not, they're definitely towards the top there. But they're always trying to advance a runner to second base. Really loving what we're getting out of Collins.
Isaac Collins.
Isaac Collins. Yep. Thank you. Really, really plays really good defense out there in left field. Is really speedy. He's a switch hitter. He's getting together some clutch hits. And then obviously we know, the trade we made with Aaron Savali and Andrew Vaughn, who all of a sudden got out of the depths of hell of the White Sox organization and has just been lighting it up. And I will 1000% say that without Andrew Vaughn, this team would not be on this, 10-game win streak going on for 11 tonight. But the Cubs lost today against the Royals. They got spanked 12-4, I just saw. So, if the Brewers win, we will be a game ahead of the Cubs that we've been chasing all year. And I definitely think the Cubs are one of the best teams in baseball, rightfully so. So, pretty exciting to watch everything with the Milwaukee Brewers. But we all know that when it all starts to count when you get to playoff baseball, if they can continue this trend and make it there. So they just need to continue to stay hot and ride that through September, October.
Yeah, score update. They're up 6-0 now at the end of 8. So pretty good chance that unless we have a colossal meltdown, that the Brewers are going to be in first place of that division and have the best record in the National League.
Crazy.
Yeah. So pretty exciting. The Miz, he's the Biz, the real Biz, and we'll see. I'm excited for him. Big Woo Woodruff, he pitched 6 scoreless innings again tonight. So I believe that this team can be a contender because of the horses they have at the front end of the lineup. One of the best bullpens in the league. Some of these guys are coming on offensively at the right time right now. Christian Yelich is having a sneaky good season. He had a really slow start, but his batting average is rising, but he's had great power numbers this season. Yeah, I'm a believer, and I do think that they'll make a trade, but I don't think that they're going to do anything that's going to mess up the future. You're not going to see him trade, Jesus Mate, Pena, and obviously Mizorowski's untouchable, but maybe with the emergence of Caleb Durbin, maybe they are willing to give up Tyler Black to get a Ryan O'Hearn from the Baltimore Orioles, somebody that can play more, plug him right into DH. He can play a little first, he can play a little corner outfield and insert just a little bit more power into that lineup. So, I don't know. I'm sure we'll check in on the Brewers again, especially if they continue to be good. This isn't a Brewers show, so we'll cut the biz there. But go Brewers, and it's an exciting time to be a baseball fan and an exciting time to be an NFL fan as the season is kind of starting to get underway again here. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that is all that we have for you today, Packers fans. Let us know what you think. What are you most excited to watch here for training camp and into the preseason? Maybe there's a competition or battle that maybe we didn't pick up on, or just let us know. We always love to engage with you guys, and you guys do a really good job of commenting on our videos. So please continue to do so. Just know that we do have new content every Wednesday and Saturday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. So please like, sub, and follow us on those platforms. Jordan and I are on the socials as well. I am at Sounds Gouda with 3 A's, and Jordan is at Olson Jord. But yeah, until next time, Packers Nation, we hope that you have a good morning, a good afternoon, and a good night. Take care. Go Pack Go.